Welcome to HD Nation, your guide to the best in HD content and the best in home theater gear, no matter what your budget is. I'm Patrick Norton.
Hi, and I'm Robert Heron.
Hope your holiday shopping is done.
Yeah.
And if it's not, good luck. From the incredible new technology department, if you have seen the new Disney movie Frozen and marveled at the realism of its virtual snow, good eye. Turns out there's a whole lot of cool science and computing power making frozen snow look as good as it does.
Totally. SIGGRAPH is the place to be if you really want to check out what's going on as far as what's going on in the world of computer graphics. And at their annual conference this past summer, Disney animators gave a presentation of the math behind the fluffy white goodness that was at the core of making Frozen's snow look as good as it did. And apparently this was a really tough problem that based using things like fluid dynamic calculations in addition to taking this into more solid materials. And in this case, they're actually using something called the material point method that is basically used to simulate the impact, the penetration, collision, and the rebound of each snow particle. And if that isn't enough for you, and yes, that's all generated. That is not real, what you're looking at right there. And I got to say this, not only is this video just cool, they really get into some of the math behind, you know, are we going to make the snow a little stickier or a little more wet, or what's the density of the particles, or how do they collide with each other and how does it respond, and how to make it look like, I guess, real snow now. And if you love that, of course, they have a link to a Wikipedia article that goes into quite a bit of the tech behind all of that. And if you have the time, actually, check on the highlight reel from SIGGRAPH for this year that goes over some of the best presentations, including, of course, the Disney one as well. But
the snow simulation.
It's tons of good stuff, but even their highlight reel though for that year is there's so much cool math behind a lot of the graphics we see nowadays that it's kind of good just to see that.
There's a lot of cool math behind all of the graphics we see.
It's not that simple.
Oh my goodness. From the tech that ain't so hot department, aka just because it's new doesn't mean it's better. Oh boy. HDTVTest.co.uk says that with Blu-ray and DVD playback, the mature PS3 runs circles. Quote, circles. Did they actually say circles?
They did.
Around the PlayStation 4 in terms of 3D support and video processing capabilities. It's good read, people. HDTVTest says video processing issues only apply to interlaced video, meaning most Blu-ray movies will play and look perfect on the PlayStation 4. It would surprise us if Sony didn't correct these issues sooner rather than later. Sony has always been very good about iterating updates to the PlayStation 3. We hope and expect, demand that Sony update the PlayStation 4 early and often to make it more better.
And specifically, their findings were just related to interlaced video only. So for
DVDs.
the majority of the Blu-rays you'll look at will be progressive format anyway. So regular movie Blu-rays are going to look fine on the PS4 compared to the PS3 directly. So will most DVDs. It's the interlaced content. Things like the extras on the disc are usually in an interlaced format. A lot of concert videos tend to be stored in that format as well. It can save some space, but when it comes to how the PS4 performs that deinterlacing, taking just the line information and making a solid picture out of it, it's missing a few chops, basically, in terms of how it does that, and it is something that can be fixed.
Crappy vintage interlaced video is going to look crappier on the PlayStation 4 than the PlayStation 3, but all of your modern, sweet, online, bought it from somebody or have it on Blu-ray is going to look great.
Phenomenal. Should look identical to the PS3.
So basically, HDTVTest might protest too much.
They just want to know specifically how it compared to the previous hardware, and man, there are some differences. So if you have like maybe you've got a lot of anime that's in interlaced format or something like that, it's going to look like it's not going to look as good as it can on the PS4 yet. And Sony has done a lot of things with the PS3 over the years as a mature player to get it really fine nowadays. It's a perfect player nowadays, relatively speaking, but the PS4 has a little bit of work to do, but it's coming. It would shock me if they didn't fix this, like you mentioned, sooner rather than later. This has to be done.
Great, people. It's more important than you think. Yeah, I mean, you laugh, right? But one of the most important results of proper video calibration, the reduction of grayscale errors, which you might be looking at the screen, as I often am, and thinking, what the hell does that mean?
You know what? We got a TV right behind us here, and every pixel on this screen is made up of 3 parts. It's a red, a green, and a blue subpixel. Tiny little red, green, blue lights. You mix all those lights together, say you want to produce a particular color, you modulate all 3 of those to make all the colors. For white, you mix all 3 colors together. But if those 3 colors as they're mixing aren't to spec, the resulting picture may appear incorrect with maybe too much blue or too much red. For example, this picture from tvcameraman.info is a pretty good example. Here would be, say, if you had the TV on its reddest or warmest picture preset for color temperature. Maybe if it were set to a correct value, this is what it should look like. And if you're using something like a dynamic or a vivid mode, chances are it's using a very blue or cool color temperature, and as such, it can appear a little cold. Also, the way the eye works, the room will determine also what the picture is going to look like as well in terms of room lighting or color of the walls or things like that. That's why we talk about so often when you're doing critical viewing, you want to be in a fairly dimly lit room. Now, when I talk about a TV's grayscale or the quality of its white balance or color temperature, I'm referring to how red, blue, and green are mixed into white and how consistent it is across all of those grayscale levels from black to peak white. Now, ideally, every shade of gray that you measure will have the same color, and that color should be the same one used by the producer and the film director during video production. Now, SpectreCal's CalMan software actually provides a way to measure these things, and I've got my gear set up, and I've got this TV set up, and I'm going to switch it over to a different input real quick here to show you, in a sense, what I'm talking about. I'm going to put up a white square on the screen, also exciting. Mixing red, blue, and green right in the middle. Now, I've already taken a measurement of this, and you can see here right on the results here. I put up a 80% white square, and when I measured it, you can see right now it's a little blue deficient. It's got way too much green, and red is pretty close to 100% where it should be. Ideally, when you're talking about mixing these three colors, for video spec, you want these to be even. And now you have controls in the TV to actually make these changes, and for that, I will show you right now. There's always going to be, well, I'm not going to say always because some less expensive TVs might not have this, but if you dig into your TV settings, usually under some advanced video, you have everything from straight color temperature settings, which are presets that give you the normal, custom, cool, which is usually more blue, computer normal, which is what I measured in this case, which had the extra green. And right below this, in this case, we actually have settings for red, blue, and green individually. So I said green was too high. It's currently at its midpoint of 128 on this particular model. I'm going to take it down to just say 100, just to see how it changes when I remeasure it real quick here. 100. And if I remeasure that 80% window, let's see what happens. My 80% value should change pretty dramatically. And in this case, it now is a little over red, but I got green back down to almost where it should be. And next I would adjust things like blue and red and get it all balanced just right. Now, for when you're making these adjustments on the TV, they can incorporate a variety of settings. It can either be something very simple, where in this case I only have one setting to control all of the grayscale values. Some TVs provide 2 points where you can adjust the darker grays and the brighter grays, and then hopefully, ideally, everything in between will just flatten out between those 2 points you've calculated. Now, more expensive TVs are offering things like 10 and 20 point grayscale adjustments where you can really flatten out a measurement. And effectively, it all comes down to, why are you doing this in the first place? Well, yeah, it's accurate color. Where do I notice this the most? And it would be, without a doubt, skin tones. Yeah. A colored light in a scene in a movie, it's kind of hard to say, oh, that's a little too blue. That should be more aquamarine. But when it comes to skin tones and you put your eyes on the screen, our brains are very good at seeing when things are not right. And if somebody with pale skin has a little bit of green in their cheek, you're suddenly wondering if, well, maybe they're either ill or perhaps there's some light being reflected somewhere else that has green in it. You can see this often with things like green screens or in sporting events. You get a lot of extra green light that should be there, even though, but if the TV's not adjusted right, that's where you run into problems, where things are like, maybe the brightest grays have a little bit of extra green, or the darkest grays are missing some red. And being able to balance that white balance gets the TV where it needs to be be able to display a picture accurately. And that's at the heart of what some of the more precise calibration goes on. You have your presets, you have things like color, contrast, and tint you can do yourself, but when it comes to dealing with the grayscale issue and getting that flat and right, you really need to have something like a hardware meter and the software to take a look at that to make it perfect.
There you have it.
So you know it's right.
The art of gray. Our
resident Sonos fiend has been experimenting with the Sonos Playbar. This is Sonos' attempt to basically take over your home theater, so to speak. But yeah, what is it?
After they've taken over the audio and the rest are fast, I don't think we've ever talked about Sonos in the house. So Playbar is a Sonos component. This is a screen from the Sonos.com website. My house doesn't look like this, but it does look like this. You know, over here, this is the Play 1. This is a Play 3. You have these wireless devices in your house. You can use your computer with an application like this. You know, know, so basically like in my Sonos favorites, in this particular one, this is the one we set up here at the office. So I've got a couple of local radio stations. You can do your music library, install your files on a server or a computer. You know, there's a whole ton of applications you can add in, you know, Last FM, Pandora Radio, Spotify. So the idea is that Sonos, this particular application, whether it's running on your Windows machine, your OS X machine, your iPhone, your Android, allows you to bring all of your music together and play them from the Sonos boxes. Sonos boxes are usually very, very small, kind of like that picture we showed up here, and they use a wireless system that is not your Wi-Fi system, so the audio is really good. The Playbar is Sonos's attempt to get into your home theater, right? So this is the Playbar. And it is basically designed to either sit flat in front of your HDTV, or it'll sense if you mount it, if you wall mount it and hang it, and it'll adjust the audio output accordingly. It's pretty cool. So what's interesting about it is the only television audio it's going to get, though, is from your television over a Toslink input, your optical output from your HDTV. So this bar right here, check this out. Inside of this bar, there are 9 speakers, 6 3.5-inch midwoofers, 3 1-inch aluminum tweeters, and they're all on this 45-degree angle, so it can adjust itself when you hang it off the wall. And actually, I'm pretty sure when you hang it off the wall, you actually have to hang it, I think it gets hung like this, because this is where the speakers are, or it goes flat like this, so the speakers are. But you know, Sonos does a lot of interesting stuff with signal processing. Each individual speaker has its own amp and gets its own signal processed by the DSP on board. So it's getting psychoacoustics on. It's giving you this big, wide image from your HDTV. So you notice something? There's no HDMI input on that.
Simple.
Yeah, so yeah, simple, and that's the kind of trade-off, right? You know, in 2 clicks we configured our remote control to control this.
That's nice.
It's so simple. There's no HDMI in, so there's no DTS HD master audio. There's no Dolby True HD lossless 7.1 channel. It'll get PCM or Dolby Digital from your HDTV. That basically means stereo or Dolby 5.1. And if your HDTV won't pass through Dolby, you're only getting stereo. So that's probably not a problem for most people that are using a soundbar. If you want to use, you know, the Playbar with a couple of other Sonos devices to create a full surround system, well, don't do it if your television only does PCM, because PCM ain't surround sound.
I will say, though, a lot of TVs I see nowadays, there's actually a specific setting in the audio to switch between PCM output and Dolby Digital for your optical output on the TV. So if you're wondering where that setting is, dig around in the audio side of it.
Yeah, it's usually buried. So this was a Vizio. It does Dolby pass-through. And that made a difference, because once we had the Dolby hooked up, we not only got the sound from the Playbar, which we'll actually control if I can point it at the IR inputs.
Nice.
So I'm using this to control the audio. And we used it, once we had it up and the Dolby out, we also tried it with a couple of Play 1 speakers as rear surrounds, which of course added surround sound, a full surround sound system wirelessly. It's really cool. The Playbar automatically turns itself on when it gets a signal from the Toslink input. The sound is really good. I mean, I was surprised. It's not the hugest amount of bass, but it kicks the snot out of the speakers on board your HDTV, I'm pretty sure. And let's just catch the captain in the air right there.
There's a little rumble coming out of that.
There is a little rumble out there. It's like 56 to 20K, they're claiming. It's down about 7 dB at 56K from the peak. TV sounds great. Movies sound great. If you want the room shaking during battle scenes, you're going to need a Sonos sub. And the Sonos sub, while it will work with all of the Sonos boxes in the house, it's like $699, which is just as much as the Sonos Playbar.
Ooh.
So there's a reason they put a lot of bass in the Playbar, is because they probably didn't expect everybody to buy a Sonos sub. One thing I should point out, I'm a big fan of at least having some kind of remote, or excuse me, some type of controls built into every device in the house. Like no button Blu-ray players piss me off. You can basically, well, you know, you have a volume control on the Playbar in case you don't have.
For those moments you can't find the remote and things are too loud, or whatever the case may be.
Everybody mocks. Here's the thing. If you are not a Sonos user, this is probably not the soundbar I would buy. If you are, you know, interested in the idea of the Sonos system, or you're already a Sonos customer, I think the Playbar does a lot of stuff really, really well. If you want simple audio for your home theater and you're a Sonos customer, this is a natural progression. And of course, the other thing this does that no other soundbar does is it does all of the stuff every other Sonos component in your house is, so we can play radio, we can play the music collection. And that's really nice.
Good sound, good integration. Nice.
We try. Yeah.
Nice. I
if
like
you
that.
want inexpensive sound bars, there's some perfectly fine sound bars from Vizio that start at under $300. This is a Sonos thing. If you don't get what Sonos does, it's not probably the way to go.
Good deal.
Oh my goodness.
Hey, in the I have to say though, in the not waiting for CES to start before making a big product announcement, I just wanted to bring up this one item that popped up the other day. The folks over at Channel Master have unveiled the DVR Plus. This was something they were going to save for CES, but they said, we're going to talk about it right now. Get this, a dual tuner over-the-air system for up to 1080p output, thin flat design, internal storage of 16 gigabytes, and it has those 2 USB ports on the back. They have an optional $40 USB Wi-Fi dongle, but big deal really is just having dual tuners. There aren't many options for over-the-air tuners as a standalone product that incorporate dual tuners, unless you're talking about something a little more pricey like a TiVo box. Coming late January, this is just something that I wanted to show off right now because there are so many cord cutters out there looking for something, and this is one of the first dual tuning products I've seen. So you could be recording 2 channels at once, or you could be watching one thing while recording another. That offers so much more flexibility than a single tuner design. It's something I've been waiting for. I think the $250 price point might be a little bit much, but it's not even in the retail channels yet. So let's see what the actual street price is on that before I really whine about its actual MSRP. So
yes. Wait till it ships before you whine.
But good. I just hope it's as sensitive as some of the other tuner products I've looked at recently too, because I'm getting great reception from inexpensive products. So
with inexpensive antennas.
That is the key for you cord cutters out there. Enjoy.
Oh my goodness. Hey, if you've been wondering where we are, youtube.com/HDNation if you want to watch us on YouTube, and subscribe please. Or you can also subscribe if you're in the iTunes, RSS feeds, podcatchers you want to watch online, revision3.com/HDNation.
That is right. And please email us your comments, questions, or suggestions, or post them right down below. And until next time, thank you for watching.